Hello everybody, welcome back to GayV Club. I'm Mariana Salem. I am here with my co-host, Duriad and Huck. We're two writers who love movies, television and books, especially when they're gay, and we're here to talk about how we relate to them as gay people of colour. And it is good to be back. Hello.
Hi.
Been away for a while for various reasons, but we're back. But just so you know, you can always keep up with us and what we're doing on Twitter and Instagram at GayV_club. We usually update those with what we're up to, why we're posting, why we're not posting, etc. So make sure you give them a follow to keep up to date with what we're up to.
Through those, you can find our personal socials, which admittedly we do update more often. Sorry. And we've also got a Patreon.
Yes, we do. We have a patreon.com/GayVclub. Please, if you want to, head over there and you can give us some monies, not very much monies, and we will give you some juicy bonus things, like extra bonus episodes or access to early episodes.
Or you can just request topics to us and we'll do bonus episodes for you as well.
Yes. Thank you to our patrons who have already signed up, and
Yes.
thank you to our listeners, all of you, for being very patient. We very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
It was really nice that even though we had a big hiatus this year, to see that we were still on people's Spotify Wrapped.
Love you.
Very heartwarming, thank you.
Thank you. But Mariana, you've been busy.
I have been very busy this year. It's very funny to me that I was like, you know what, I'm going to have like at least a year off academia to just chill out and relax, and I don't actually feel like I've chilled out or relaxed.
You don't still want to go back, do you?
I don't know. That is
okay. Sorry.
That's okay. I don't know. We'll figure that out. I'll figure that out someday. But what I have done is I've actually kicked a pretty big goal this year that I didn't expect to kick. I'm going to be published in a speculative fiction anthology that's going to be an actual physical real life book. The anthology is called This All Come Back Now, and is going to be published by the University of Queensland Press. It is a world-first anthology of speculative fiction, exclusively by First Nations authors from so-called Australia. It will be published and available to buy from May 3rd, 2022, but I'd really love it if people could pre-order if they can and support blackfella authors, because, we get paid on the basis of pre-orders and how much the publishers actually make, which I never understood until this point in time. I always used to think it was weird how people would always be like, please pre-order, but it's because, if you tell the publishers you want more, then we get more. Woohoo! Very big dream of mine. Didn't expect to kick it, in the year of our Lord 2021, in my year of rest and chilled outness. But yeah, I'm very happy. We will put the link where you can pre-order the book in
all the places, in
the doobly-doos, etc.
Yeah,
there's a word I haven't used in a long time. Can you tell I grew up watching the Vlog Brothers? Maybe you can't. But anyway, what are we talking about today, Durian?
Okay, we're talking about how. So, did you know, Mariana? Films are one of the most expensive art forms to produce.
They can't be.
That's one of the reasons why there aren't that many LGBT films, because no one wants to give money to LGBT stories. I wonder why. Even less so when the filmmakers themselves are openly LGBT. So today we wanted to look at the LGBT films that people have thrown money at. So we've got 40-something films to go through, and we're looking at them from lowest budget to highest budget, and we're going to determine if, sometimes things that are expensive are worse.
That hypothesis was proposed by the great philosopher Freckle in The Gay and Wondrous Life of Caleb Gallo. And if you haven't seen The Gay and Wondrous Life of Caleb Gallo, please pause this episode, go and watch it on YouTube for free, because that's where it is, and come back, because I feel that if you know what the context of where our title is from, you'll just be a happier person. You will just be a more fulfilled person. Unfortunately, some studios, though, are super cagey about their budgets. Very rarely do they release breakdowns of where the money went to things like salary or production or CGI, and they almost never include marketing costs, because that would probably be very embarrassing.
Yeah. Thinking how funny it would be if we had the actual numbers for the last duel.
I would actually love a budget breakdown of like all of Ridley Scott's movies, to be honest.
Yeah, but like The Last Duel is like his first biggest flop in forever, which is just funny.
I want to see the budget breakdown for Gods in Egypt so I can see how much it cost for Ridley Scott to be that racist. Like, how much did it cost him?
Excuse me, Mariana, my friend is in that movie as an extra.
I do just want to say though that I'm not even sure, like, I'm not that trusting of Hollywood, and I'm not even sure that the numbers we get for these budgets are actually true, but they're the ones that we have access to. So we're ranking them based on the numbers that we are given.
Yeah, reported to Forbes, etc.
You're going to hear us say things like, only $1 million, like we're characters in Succession, but, you know, don't worry, we are poor.
Yeah, but yeah, so for the purpose of this episode, we basically, GayV Club is a bank. We're just gonna see if the money was ours, and if we knew that if we gave them money and received the exact end results, like, would we give them that much money? So yeah, to kick off, just our baseline, at $4 million is Moonlight. That's the price of perfection. It's the best movie ever. Please check out our most recent-ish episode on it. It's great. But yeah, for Moonlight, definitely like something that Barry Jenkins and Oliver McCraney like have spoken about is how difficult that movie was to get made, and like all these budgeting issues. So like definitely like I would give them whatever number they asked.
Like, if this is what they can do with 4 million, like, imagine what they could do with more.
Next, coming up in 5 million, Dallas Buyers Club, which you've seen, Mariana.
I have. I've seen this movie many times.
Dallas Buyers Club by Jean-Marc Vallée.
So, Dallas Buyers Club is a 2013 movie based on a true story. It is about a man called Ron, played by Matthew McConaughey, who is a straight man who discovers he has AIDS, and also discovers that, you know, when you have AIDS, people are shitty to you. Shock, horror, gasp. And he wants to not have AIDS. He starts smuggling in banned drugs that can help patients survive longer, because, you know, popular drugs like, what's it called? Was it AZT?
AZT?
The drug AZT, the drug at the time, was famously not helping people. It was helping some, but, like, not a lot of people. And he got around this by forming a club called the Dallas Buyers Club, where people just paid a subscription, and he would give them vitamins and experimental drugs some of which did actually help, that he would smuggle in from places in South America. Because while it was illegal to sell drugs, he technically didn't sell drugs. He sold this subscription to the club, which is why it's called Dallas Buyers Club. The movie starred Jared Leto as a trans woman named Rayon. I think both Matthew McConaughey and Jared Leto won Oscars for this.
Yeah, they did.
I'm not very much mistaken.
They did.
There is a past version of me that really did love this movie. But, you know, since then I have grown, and I've come to realize that it is not a movie that is as good as it should be, in terms of, like, having actual empathy for the people that it's about. I think this movie really only needed maybe a few, like, empathetic adjustments to who it actually focused on, and it could have actually been, like, an incredible film. But, you know, we can't judge a movie on what it potentially could have been. We have to judge it on what it is. And to be quite honest, if I gave someone $5 million in 2013, and they came back to me with this, I would ask them to go back and do a bit better by the people who were mostly affected by the subject matter that it deals with, because it doesn't really do that. Also, this movie had the cultural impact on people in Australia of making them all get VPNs. In Australia, I don't know if you know this about Australia, but Australia has the highest rates of piracy. Not like cool, like Jack Sparrow kind of piracy, just like,
internet
you know,
piracy, like content piracy.
Content piracy. It has the highest rate of piracy in the world every year. Like, every year Australia is like number one on the list. I could go into the reasons why that is, but, you know, the reasons I feel are quite obvious to Australians if you're listening. So a lot of the time, the Australian government has tried to like appease like international distribution companies by trying to be like, yeah, we're trying to crack down on the fact that nobody in this country wants to pay for media.
Never mind that it's never made accessible here.
Yeah, never mind that it's never made accessible. Never mind, charge more for data in this country than most other countries, etc., etc. No. But one of the times where this happened, where Australia was put on the cringe stage for being like a huge nation of people who don't like paying for media, of pirates, is when this movie had come out in the US and it hadn't been released here yet, and many people had pirated it so much that Sony tried to take one of the large telecom companies here to court so they could get the IP addresses of everyone who had downloaded the film and, send them fines. And this led to a very stressful few weeks in this country where everyone who had pirated movies believed that they were going to go to jail for pirating Dallas Buyers Club, which I just think is really funny. Like, can you imagine, like, sitting in a circle, like, in the prison therapy session? And everyone's like, oh, what are you in for? And they're like, I robbed a bank, like, I killed someone, etc. Then it comes around to you and you're like, yeah, I just wanted to watch Dallas Buyers Club. Of course, no, that didn't happen. The court was like, yeah, we can't actually ask a company to reveal people's private information. But then people learned that, you should use a VPN. And also, I think it was the following year.
It was banned. Like, all these sites were banned.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, or maybe it was the same year, actually, in 2014. If you have an Australian IP address, you won't be able to access any of the famed piracy sites. But I wouldn't know anything about that because I don't do that.
Yeah.
Dallas Buyers Club, like, in Australia, like, this movie, like, had a pretty big cultural impact in terms of the use of VPNs in Australia. Yeah. So, yeah, was the $5 million they spent to make that movie worth it? Certainly to the VPN companies it was.
God. Dallas Buyers Club is a psyop, is an Australian psyop to make people buy VPNs.
The true purpose of Dallas Buyers Club was to actually, like, get Australians to use VPNs.
But yeah, I just want to say if Jean-Marc Vallée asked me for $5 to top up his Opal, I would say no, because I don't like his body of work. I hate what he did to Big Little Lies and Sharp Objects, and
I won't forgive that man for what he did to Sharp Objects. I was so angry.
I will not. No, I will never forgive. Anyway, coming up at 6 million, Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Lesbians just stay winning. We've talked about Portrait of a Lady on Fire before, but it's just one of those near perfect, if not perfect, movies.
Yeah. Also, just like to note, we've mostly got American-made productions on this list because I feel like the culture around like movie budgets, discussion of budgeting and just the market.
I feel like the West generally has more of a obsession with money and knowing about money.
Well, I mean, France is also part of the West. When it comes to like this much money being used, there is definitely like a bit more, especially with like American productions. There's a lot more concern about like how much was it worth it, and how profitable these films are. But yeah, we've included some non-US, so we have included like some international films just to show like a little bit of a scale of like how much these things cost. Yeah, and also at 6 million is Bound, which is a perfect film. Once again, lesbians stay winning. Bound is the film that the Wachowskis made prior to The Matrix, and it's sexiest film ever made, and it's also it's really fun to watch because it's kind of like the blueprint.
I only saw it for the first time recently, and I had a lot of fun watching it because there were so many shots in it that I was like, oh, they used that later in The Matrix.
Okay, at 7 million we have the film Colette by Smalland, a biopic about the French writer Colette, starring Keira Knightley. This movie is okay. This movie is okay. It's not that expensive, so I don't really have much to complain about. I shouldn't really have much to complain about. It's more just like as a diehard Keira Knightley fan, finally getting to see this movie, which was in pre-production hell for like several years. It was admittedly a letdown, but I'm over it. I'm fine. I'm okay.
Colette is one of those movies. It's kind of very ironic in the sense that it is a movie about condemning a man for like consuming the attention of a woman's career, but then like the movie itself focuses way too much on Colette's husband and not enough on her. So it's kind of ironic, like the film is doing the thing that it's trying to criticize the culture for doing, and it's like, maybe you should have just made a film about, you know, the woman you've titled the film with. Like, that's a crazy thought, isn't it? I like this movie, actually. Like, I have my problems with it, but
I love the style of this movie so much, and all like the little period jokes about like, you know, like the electricity and stuff.
I love the costuming. Except, you know, there was that whole Egypt thing, but whatever.
Yeah, that's I mean, I appreciate that they didn't try to like make that unproblematic, you know?
Yes.
Because it was like an actual thing that happened. Also at 7 million, Capote, directed by Bennett Miller from Moneyball. Truman Capote biopic starring the legend Philip Seymour Hoffman. This is what he won his Oscar for. Follows Truman Capote as he wrote In Cold Blood, which is considered one of the first true crime novels of all time. And yeah, I think it's a pretty good movie. I really like it. Philip Seymour Hoffman's great. Like, whenever I start watching a movie with him, it's like automatically 4 stars, and then I kind of like take or add away from it there, because he's always like the best part of everything.
Next up, $8.8 million US, we have The Handmaiden. And that's on why 8 is a lucky number, lads. 8.8 million, and you get The Handmaiden, one of the best movies of all time. Definitely definitely the best movie of all time for you, Duriadin.
Yeah.
Would you give it more money?
I don't know. It's like, it doesn't need more money, you know? But like, you know, anything to make it easier. Really, like, in the case of like, you know, for instance, like Moonlight, and like all these perfect films that we've just mentioned, like, more money would have made it easier for these movies. Then yeah, definitely. Also, like, I don't know, I would have loved for The Handmaiden to actually be distributed in Australia. So that's something I would pay money for. I would pay money for an actual Australian release of The Handmaiden. But yeah, other than that, I would buy The Handmaiden take it out of Amazon's claws. 10.8 million is Pain and Glory. I love this movie. This is also a perfect movie. Like it or not, Pedro Almodovar, he's like a pioneer of gay cinema, and it's just worth noting that like I think this is like the last international film that we mention on this list anyway. Pretty much all of his films these days, like of this past decade, he's been pulling this kind of budget to make his stuff, and it's all been pretty good. Next at 11.8, we have Carole by Tordens.
Why did you say that in a French accent? Did you really think this movie needed to be more annoying? Like, they said that you said it in a French accent. What is wrong with you?
I was imitating Adele Haenel. There's this interview where she was promoting Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and she's talking about, like, her favorite lesbian films. And she says, oh yeah, Carole by Tordens. And you know how, like, film Twitter likes to, you know, just take snippets of conversation and thingy? Like, that was a meme for a very long time.
Okay.
Anyways, so this is based on the Patricia Highsmith novel, The Price of Salt. Obviously, you know, Carole has a cultural impact for the Harold They're Lesbians meme.
The origins. Maybe Carole is worth it for that meme, but
at the same time, like, I think that really just speaks to the lack of chemistry between Rooney Mara and Cate Blanchett. That, you know, at some point in that movie, that lady just, she turned over to Harold. She had to go and tell Harold and
Harold, they're lesbians, Harold. I don't know where Harold is, but I want him to know.
Harold and his fellow cinema-going partner.
I want him to know. Harold, I want you to know that I understand why you didn't know, because this movie is the most boring movie ever made. I acquired this movie to watch, and I put it on, and I fell asleep 40 minutes into it because I was so bored, and then I woke up and didn't even realize I'd fallen asleep because what I was seeing on the screen still made sense to me because they weren't doing anything Nothing happens in this movie. And then when I eventually realized I'd fallen asleep, I went back and watched it, and I still remained unconvinced that this was a lesbian film, even as they were making out, because that's how little chemistry Rooney Mara and Cate Blanchett had. They couldn't even... Did they just spend the $11.8 million on dousing them in cold water so that they didn't have any chemistry? Like, what? Where's the $11.8 million? I could make this movie for $40 with some gay friends, and I can guarantee you I could do something better, that more convincing as a lesbian romance. Cannot stand Carol. Cannot stand Carol. And Cate Blanchett, I just want to say on an unrelated but still related note, she named her child after Roman Polanski. Do with that information what you will. Cannot stand. $11.8 million. I would be so angry, not only at the filmmakers, but at myself for thinking that that I could give someone $11.8 million and they would come back with a good film. Like, I would doubt the very...
You just keep going. You still go.
I would doubt the very, philosophical worth of money if I had spent $11.8 million and, came back with this. That's all I'll say. I'm done. I'm finished.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Yeah.
You're done? You're done?
I'm done.
You're good?
I'm
You're
done.
good? Thank you, Mariana, for that.
You're welcome. Rooney Mara's an industry
Just relentless. Just... But yeah, anyways, just in general, I like Todd Haynes in general, and I think this movie is a technical masterpiece, but I just hate everything else about it. It's based on it's a Patricia Highsmith adaptation. She was a lesbian author. Her representations of queer people in her work, it's interesting. And I think the thing that is interesting about the movie Carol is the way that it's adapted, because the thing about The Price of Salt is, as we know, Carol is much older than Therese.
Don't ask me.
I want to say Therese, yeah. But yeah, Carol Laird, she's way older than Therese is. There actually is, believe it or not, there's actually that age gap, that dynamic is actually quite manipulative somehow. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? And the screenplay for this movie was adapted by a lesbian, and the thing is, it kind of removes that manipulative aspect out of their relationship, but you've still got the age gap, which is weird as shit. And by removing that and having nothing between Carol and Therese in that movie also just adds to the lack of chemistry, because there's no
There's no stakes. What am I looking at?
You guys are just having a staring competition with each other.
Thank you.
That's what
it's not even an interesting staring competition.
But yeah, that's our thoughts on Carol. $12 million. We have the film Frida Kahlo biopic starring Salma Hayek, directed by Julie Taymor. This movie also has the same kind of problem that we mentioned with Colette, where it focuses too much on her shitty husband. It's a really well-made film, but at the same time, knowing what we know now about the way that Salma Hayek was treated by Harvey Weinstein as she was trying to get this film made, it puts a bad taste in your mouth, This price range that we're in kind of the Oscar baity, biopic-y range right now,
yes,
of the films that we're discussing, from Salma Hayek's piece, detailing the abuse that she faced from Weinstein. She also mentions just kind of all the hoops that he made her jump through in order to make this film and in order to secure funding for this film. So even though this is only $12 million, this is something that she had to really, really fight for. I'm
glad she did, to be honest. I still think it's a great film. I'm sure there's a parallel universe out there somewhere where it's a bit of a different film and doesn't have the same problems that Colette has, but I agree. I think it's a nice movie. Next up, we have
$14 million.
2014's The Imitation Game, which is another Oscar bait biopic about Alan Turing, the gay British man who is essentially responsible for modern computing as we know it. It specifically centers on Alan Turing's time as a codebreaker during World War II. he is played by Benedict Cumberbatch.
What?
And this movie was released after Alan Turing was posthumously pardoned by the institutions that killed him. The movie actually tried to sort of advocate, and so did the stars of the film, tried to advocate for all the other gay men that were criminalized in the same way that Alan Turing was. I don't know if anything came of that. I don't think anything did. But I know for sure that Alan Turing and the gay men that suffered under that criminalization deserve better than this movie.
I hated it. I don't think Alan Turing deserves this. I think it would be really nice to see someone have another crack at this, with much more care this time. And in the meantime, there's like a couple of docu-series on Alan Turing on like Canopy that you can watch for free. I highly recommend people go do that. Okay, so also at 14 million is Brokeback Mountain, which is, yeah, it's one of the first mainstream gay films, I'd say, because it was like really high profile due to like the cast who was making it. Ang Lee, legend, critically acclaimed. I think also because it was so high profile, it did invite a lot of homophobic public discourse. Like, it's referred to as the gay cowboy movie. Everyone knows it as that. Quite a few people that did go to see it to make fun of it, and there are a lot of people that did go see it and, you know, don't feel any empathy at all and kind of just think it's all funny. Other than that, like, it's still like a massively successful film, and, you know, the right people know how good it is. The success of Brokeback Mountain, it encouraged more interest in gay stories that weren't so stereotypical, so it led to like increased financial support for gay storytelling.
Rest in peace to Heath Ledger.
Rest in peace, Heath Ledger.
But please don't listen to anything that Jake Gyllenhaal says about this movie. I've never known someone to have like such a weird perspective on what the movie that they were making was about.
I will note as well, this isn't the first gay film that Ang Lee has ever made. His best gay film, The Wedding Banquet, was made with only $1 million. This is not to say that in this instance that the expensive thing is worse, obviously. It's just that there are other things. It's just that there are small stories. And yeah. 15 million. We've got 3 movies here.
Yes, we do. 15 million is an interesting number. Like, it's the middle
Mixed
of the
bag.
road.
It's the middle of our top 40 list, but it's not the middle.
No, it's very much not the middle. It's the middle of our list, though.
Yeah.
First up, we have The Favourite, written by Aussie legend Tony McNamara, which, you know, it's an ahistorical comedy about Queen Anne. Queen Anne and her ladies in waiting, basically. Directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. Misery Loves Company. It's excellent. It's a great movie. The ending is incredibly depressing, but it's a really good movie. And everyone is great in this movie. Perfect cast. 15 million. Would I give him more? I don't know what he'd need it for, but if he needed it, yes, I'd give him more. Also in this category, we have The Danish Girl, which is about Lily Elbe, who is one of the first trans women to undergo gender confirmation surgery. Transphobic casting, Eddie Redmayne, who only in the year of our Lord 2021 admitted that he probably wouldn't do that if he was offered the role now. But you know what? He's saying this is in an interview where he's promoting his role in Cabaret, where he plays the second lead in Cabaret, which is usually played by queer actors. Alan Cumming famously has played the role, and he's playing the role. Like, Eddie Redmayne is playing this role in Cabaret, so it's very clear that even though he's saying he believes that, you know, there should be more accurate casting, it's clear that that's a rule for thee and not for me, according to Eddie Redmayne.
I think it's interesting the way actors will they'll speak out about the problematic choices they've made in the past when they join like new queer projects. One of the biggest examples I can think of is Kate Winslet, like when she was trying to get people to watch Ammonite. She's just like, I can't believe a 40-year-old woman was working with Woody Allen and Robert, like, what was I thinking? People like Eddie Redmayne and Kate Winslet, and the way that they will only really admit to these poor decisions and face regret to these poor decisions when, by taking on queer projects, they've kind of opened themselves up to scrutiny from LGBT audiences, and You really fucking need us to validate you in this. You really need us to validate you in this instance. And so you're only going to apologize for your shit now because you want us to watch your movie or go see your play. No, also it's just a bit funny as well because because I've only really noticed this happen like when they're doing gay films, especially. I don't understand why. Kate Winslet, were you scared that all the angry lesbian feminist dykes wouldn't go see your movie? Like what? I don't get it. But yeah, that's something to look out for in future.
I know Eddie Redmayne is being very disingenuous here, not just because he is, doing it in promotion of a queer movie, but because Eddie Redmayne famously defended J.K. Rowling during one of the many times that she has been a TERF. She is a TERF. And she is his primary source of income at the moment. So I really don't put any stock in any kind of regret that Eddie Redmayne may express. You're going to talk about this next one.
Also 15 million, Mulholland Drive by David Lynch. I don't want to explain what Mulholland Drive is about because you can look up the synopsis, and even if you did look up the synopsis, I would add the word allegedly to the end of it. The thing about David Lynch movies is they always feel like they cost half of what their reported budgets were. So I think you could easily make this with half. I friggin' hope the crew is well paid on his movies because where does the money go? But yeah, Mulholland Drive, it's like one of the few Lynches that I think are good. I really hate film bro culture around David Lynch and the way people are like, oh, well, this movie is really good to watch when you're high. Actually, I think if you need to abuse substances not to sound like a narc, but but if you need to abuse substances in order to enjoy a piece of media, it's not good. Like, is David Lynch gonna pay for my weed?
Abusing substances and watching a movie is one way to make sure that you probably won't really perceive the movie.
But yeah, I think Mulholland Drive is good. I watched it sober. I thought it was fine. I quite enjoy it. His other stuff, maybe you do need something because yeah, he's full of shit. He's full of shit, isn't he?
The only media I've seen made by David Lynch is his daily weather reports on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
And I love them. It's like he's just this old man who is like, I hope it will be sunny today, and then that's it.
Number 17, Love, Simon.
We love Simon.
This is a fun movie, okay? It's a movie that I wish I got to watch in high school, and I'm really glad gay kids now have this to watch when they're in high school, because this is a movie about gay teens. It's actually for teenagers, which is really important because there's not a lot of media that exists. There's still not that much media that exists for it. It's not a perfect film ideologically, and it's not particularly complex, and it oversimplifies a lot of things. But yeah, it's a good teen movie.
Also, Keenan Lonsdale is there.
Yeah, Keenan Lonsdale, Dance Academy alumnus, is there.
Yes.
So what do you want? Come on.
Yeah, tell me you don't cry when, he comes out to his mum, Jennifer Garner, and she says that beautiful thing to him. Like, come on now.
Yeah. $20
Milk.
million. Milk. Harvey Milk biopic. It's a pretty compelling film. It's by Gus Van Sant, a really influential gay filmmaker. He's also made a few other things like My Imprivate Idaho, for instance. This is still a Sean Penn movie. It's still very much a kind of Oscar baity, oh, please nominate me for impersonating this really distinctive voiced person kind of movie. I wouldn't say also James Franco is in it. And I think it's kind of interesting. It's more just a recounting. Even though I like Gus Van Sant, I think this movie itself isn't that much different to just like a regular documentary that recounts events slowly without any real personal. It doesn't really have much personal insight, I'd say. I think you could watch a series of news reports and you'd be left with the same impression. I still enjoyed it. It's a compelling watch, but also mostly my main problem is Sean Penn.
Can I just say that's quite literally how I feel about The Crown? Like, when I've tried to watch The Crown with my brother, who is a huge fan of The Crown, I just feel like I've watched a whole bunch of news reports. Like, I don't feel like I've watched television. It's just deeply unimpactful for me watching The Crown.
Yeah. Next up, 23 million. Fuck this movie. Green Book.
Which is a completely not true story, completely not true biopic about Don Shirley.
Allegedly about Don Shirley.
Allegedly
is it really about
Don
him?
Shirley.
He's in the back seat, literally.
Yeah.
In every sense of the word.
We talked about Green Book very briefly in our biopic episode, so feel free to go back and listen to those if you want to know our thoughts in detail. But $23 million, I would actually rather just keep the money and not make this movie, you know?
Yeah. Waste of money.
It was not a very nice time in my life when people were going to see this movie, and then, you know, there were the older people in my life going to see this movie and then coming back and telling me how, like, wonderful it was. And I was like, what was wonderful about it? The white saviorism, the racism, the homophobia, like, what did you find so wonderful?
Behind the Candelabra. This is actually an HBO TV movie, but it's directed by Steven Soderbergh, who is he's a good filmmaker, but his last few projects have been really awful. There's like no reason to respect him. I feel like the last 3 things he's done flops that were just absolute terrible, very bad ideas. But yeah, Behind the Candelabra, it's a Liberace biopic that focuses on the progression of one of his relationships. Obviously being a Liberace biopic, opulence is key. So yeah, you do need $23 million to make a TV movie about Liberace, because yeah, the movie looks really good in terms of production, costuming, everything, plus like the prosthetics as well. Makeup is like huge in this movie, and yeah, I think it's pretty good. Not a waste of money, I don't think. 25 million, The Hours by Stephen Daldry. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. It's based on the Michael Cunningham novel. It follows 3 different timelines of Virginia Woolf writing Mrs. Dalloway, 2 other generations of women later in the future reading Mrs. Dalloway, basically. Yeah, so $25 million, $2 was spent on Nicole Kidman's nose. But yeah, I really love this movie. I was forced to watch this in Extension 1 in year 11 during my very big internalized homophobia phase, and I really hated it, but now I really love it. I know what it is. Philip Glass does the soundtrack for this movie, and I don't know how much he got for this movie, but I would double it because it is one of the best film scores of all time. It's beautiful. Oh, also at 25, Battle of the Sexes. No one remembers this Billie Jean King biopic.
I did not remember it.
She's a former #1 American tennis player. Emma Stone plays her. It's a pretty well focused for a biopic, I think, actually. It's still just really boring. It stars one of the main villains of this
I'm just thinking about
what?
You know that at the end of 7 Days in Hell when they're talking about how like they died and they're like
but no one cared because they were tennis players.
Yeah, but no one gave a shit because they were tennis players. That's literally what you're saying.
But it's just also like Mary and I, we do like tennis actually quite a bit.
We do love tennis,
and yeah. Yeah, Margaret Court is one of the main villains in this movie, other than Steve Carell's character, is Margaret Court, a homophobic icon. Something nice about this movie is Alan Cumming is there. Alan Cumming is there as her, I don't know, wardrobe assistant or whatever. Something pretty stereotypical, but it's still just really nice to see him there, you know? But yeah, this is $25 million that no one remembers spending.
I don't know why, actually. You'd think that people would. It was pretty stacked for a cast, really.
Yeah, it was a really stacked cast, but...
But, you know, it's about tennis players.
So no one cared. It's about tennis players, so no one gave a shit. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe watch it. It's not a terrible time, you know? Okay, next.
Watch it, and then watch 7 Days in Hell.
Yeah.
The greatest tennis film ever made.
Yeah, the greatest queer tennis film ever made, 7 Days in Hell.
double feature 7 Days in Hell and Battle of the Sexes.
No. That's okay. $30 million.
30 million at 30 million US dollars. We have Atomic Blonde, the 80s nostalgia action spy movie starring Charlize Theron as a bisexual spy, and her love interest in this movie is Sophia Boutella. It's also kind of James McAvoy, I guess. I don't know. In concept, this movie sounds really cool. In reality, it looks great, but it is not cool.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of like whatever. It's like a solid 3.5 stars, I'd say.
I had a good time.
Nothing that I care to repeat watching. Yeah.
I had a good time when I went to see it.
It's a David Leitch movie, so it looks really good.
Yeah.
And you enjoy it as you watch it, but do you want to watch it again? Not really.
No, I've never watched it again, I don't think.
This movie is based on a graphic novel called Atomic Blonde, The Coldest City. Yeah, Coldest City. The role of Delphine, Sophia Boutella's character, she was originally a dude in this comic, so they gender bent for this movie, thereby making Charlize Theron's character bisexual. Think about this. Do you remember when the trailers for this movie came out and literally the entire sex scene was in the trailers?
Yeah, I do. And I feel like they kind of marketed it to men that way.
Yeah. It's really just, when you watch this movie, it's just like, oh, okay. Literally like James Bond, but with a woman. It's literally just like a woman treating another woman like shit. And I've had a look at what filmmakers have had to say about their decision to gender bend. They said it was because they thought that Delphine represented Lorraine's loss of innocence and the person that she used to be. So feels kind of bad, tastes bad, and she ends up killing her or getting her killed. It's spoilers, but so also her death is also in the trailer.
Question mark?
No, and not everything has to be self-assessed, Marion.
Sorry. But what if it does, okay? What if everything is?
Everything is self-assessed.
Charlize Theron's interviews around this film still fascinate me to this day. During the time this film being promoted, she would say in interviews, and whether or not this is just an anecdote she thin air to promote the movie, I don't know, but she said in lots of different interviews that she would say things like that she was straight, but she often, in her youth and in her early 20s, had fantasies about romantic relationships with women and even dated women, but she would reiterate that she was straight, and I don't know what any of that means. Charlize, I
just think it's really interesting.
I just think it's really interesting, I think we've talked about before how straight act, when they are playing a role that is gay or gay adjacent, they tend to find some anecdote from their past to pull out about how oh no, I am on the wavelength, even though I'm not gay, I am on the wavelength of the gays, which is, I think it's always kind of quite entertaining to hear what these anecdotes are, because it's oh, you think this anecdote is the equivalent of being gay? All right, that's interesting. Atomic Blonde. Would I pay, how much was it? 30 million?
30 million.
Would I pay 30 million for it? Honestly, if Delphine lived in this movie, it would be worth 30 million, I think.
Or if it just wasn't so, maybe, I don't know, Delphine can still die, whatever. I'm not particularly invested in Lorraine being happy.
I think most of that money went to paying for the music, to be honest. Yeah.
When I saw this movie, it was actually a special preview screening.
Oh, wow.
Thingy. Actually, my friend won tickets from Pedestrian to see this movie.
Nice.
But then she actually lives in Melbourne and it was in Sydney, and so she just gave me her tickets. And yeah, so this was sponsored by a certain brand of vodka that is so when we got to the screening, we got free vodka. It was really nice, actually. It was like vodka mixed with this lemon, iced lemon. It was great. But yeah, when we went into the movie with our drinks, there's 3 separate times where she specifically orders that vodka at the bar, and so it was really cringe. So yeah, $30 million vodka ad.
You probably wouldn't have noticed it, if you didn't
No,
know.
not really.
Like,
Not probably not. Probably not. $30
that's
million
very
vodka
funny.
ad.
Moving on.
31 million. The Birdcage. I love this movie. It's adapted from a French-Italian comedy film musical. Robin Williams is in it with Nathan Lane. They are beautiful together. This screenplay was adapted by Elaine May, Queen. And yeah, this film might seem really dated now, but I still really love it. Like, it's just a wonderful time.
I don't think a film being dated is necessarily an indication of whether it's bad or not. Like, things can be dated and still be good. Like, they're just, it's just of a particular time. And but no, I'd only watched this movie for the first time recently. I absolutely loved it. I struggle a lot usually to watch things with Robin Williams in them. Like, since he died, like, I can't. It makes me too sad. But this movie was like, I had a great time with it, and I also loved Christine Baranski in this movie. Her and Robin Williams, like, I just loved them in this movie. They were so funny. Beautiful movie. Love Nathan Lane. Everything he's in is always wonderful and brings a lot of joy. So I would happily give this much money to make this movie. Happily. Every time.
Yeah.
So next up we have, between 30 and 39 million, we have The Power of the Dog, which is a Western.
By Jane Campion. Yeah, Power of the Dog, it's actually like one of my favorite movies of the year.
It's really good.
Unfortunately, Benedict Cumberbatch is in it, but yeah, that's the power of Jane Campion. That's the power of women. I still enjoyed it.
I also think it's okay that he's in this because, like, he's meant to be, like,
he's
so
such
annoying.
A cunt.
He's meant to be, like, the worst trademark, like, so it's fine. And, you know, I think actually it's a stroke of genius that Jane Campion was like, I need someone who can be the worst, and then she, like, rang up Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
The score of this movie is probably one of my favorite scores of the year. The music in this film is by Johnny Greenwood, who also did Spencer, and I haven't watched Spencer, so I haven't heard the score for it yet.
Who gives a fuck about Spencer? He also did Phantom Thread,
a movie that I am not a huge fan of, but it has got good music.
Johnny Greenwood, he's in Radiohead.
Damn, cool. Didn't know that. Benedict Cumberbatch, like, not to keep talking about him, but, like, the character he plays is, like, the most dramatic bitch I've ever seen. Like, I thought this movie was a comedy because his character is so dramatic. Like, there is a scene that, like, absolutely cracks me up. Jesse Plemons comes in and is like, hey bro, I'm gonna, like, you know, get our parents to meet the wife, so could you maybe come to dinner? Could you maybe, like, clean up, bro? Like, you know, make sure you have a shower and stuff and look nice because, you know, we're having dinner with the wife and the parents. And, like, and then Cumberbatch's character, like, Phil or whatever his name is, looks at Jesse Plemons like he's just asked him to run over a baby with a bus or something. Like, the look on his face is like, I simply am not going to do that, you know, and there's, like, no reason for it. And then, like, the next minute, you know, they're having dinner, Phil doesn't show up, and then he does, and just humiliates Kirsten Dunst, looking filthy, he's looking disgusting, probably stinks. Like, I feel like I could, like, emotionally, I could smell him watching this.
Like, memes aside, this movie is good. It's a really great exploration of toxic masculinity, as you've probably seen all the
critiques,
as you've probably seen all the headlines say. I think a lot of media that I've seen trying to touch on this topic, I'm gonna use Ted Lasso as an example. I think there's only so far you can go without actually addressing how homophobia is, like, one of the greatest contributors to this issue, one of the greatest factors of this issue. I really like that this film went in on that.
It did. Love that movie. Would happily pay.
Give Jane Campion whatever amount of money she wants. 40 million.
In this category, we have Rocket Man, my best friend, my beloved Rocket Man. I love Rocket Man. We've talked about Rocket Man a lot on this podcast. My fondness for this movie has only ever grown. I would happily give $40 million for Rocket Man.
Much like with Behind the Candelabra, the Liberace biopic, like, it's Elton John. To get the aesthetic right, and the aesthetic is key in this case, yeah, you need the money.
Yes.
Also at 40 million is one of my least favorite movies of all time, The Talented Mr. Ripley, also based on a Patricia Highsmith novel. I have so much beef with this movie.
Oh?
When I watched this movie for the first time a few years back with my friend, we spent literally a week texting each other, like how to fix this movie, because just dude, I hate Matt Damon so much. I hate Matt Damon, I hate Cate Blanchett, I hate Gwyneth Paltrow. I don't understand what Gwyneth Paltrow's accent is supposed to be in this movie. It's like she just changes constantly. The only saving grace of this movie is Philip Seymour Hoffman, who, as I've mentioned, is always the best part of everything he's in. Also, this is like the second best looking Jude Law has been in a movie.
So could you fix him?
This movie is so stupid. It's so,
But could
and it's
you
so
fix him?
bad. I could, yeah, easily fix him. I could maybe throw, I don't know, like Xavier Dolan or some shit. I'd give him maybe like 20 mil to try and have a crack at this movie.
Oh my god, Xavier Dolan would go crazy with 20
He would
mil.
go crazy with this material. Like I hate this movie because of how good it could have been.
42 million. Yes, we have Bruno. I hate Sacha Baron Cohen. I can't stand this man. I think it's really weird that everyone's just forgotten, like, how racist this man is. And I hate that, like, you know, during last year when he was on the Oscar trail for Trial of the Chicago 7, he even tried to pull this sort of thing like, yes, but, you know, when I was in brownface, making my movies where I was in brownface, that was parody. So it's fine, actually, and it was fine at the time, and, you know, it's not fine now, but it was fine at the time. No, it wasn't, Mr. Baron Cohen. Like, you are directly responsible for so many micro and macro aggressions that I experienced growing up. If I see you in real life, because I know there's a chance of that, because you literally live here on my stolen land, like, meet me in the pit, we will fight to the death, and I will marry Isla Fisher in your place. Like, I will marry your widow. And Bruno, which is the film that is $42 million, it's simply homophobic because Sacha Baron Cohen made it. Think of it almost as an ironic study of homophobia, but it's not. It's actually just homophobic.
Yeah.
I would rather spend $42 million on literally anything else other than this movie. I don't even think you could fix it for $42 million.
No.
Literally just give it to anyone else.
Just
give it to Xavier Dolan. Give it to Xavier Dolan to make our
Goldfinch.
$52 million.
Another fuck this movie. Have you noticed, guys, things that are expensive? Sometimes things that are expensive are worse, and they're really getting worse as we're climbing this ladder.
Freckle was correct. Bohemian Rhapsody. We talked about this in depth, why we don't like this movie, in our Men Loving Men biopic episode. This movie is just a lie, and it's an expensive lie. There's very little to redeem it. I'd almost argue there's nothing to redeem it.
There's nothing to redeem it, not really.
Next up, $54 million. We have my friend, my best friend, my guy, my dude, V for Vendetta. Yeah. Based on the graphic novel by Alan Moore. It is a speculative fiction movie. The screenplay is by the Wachowskis. It is a fun movie about how fascism can affect LGBT. That's what Day has written in the notes. It's a fun movie about how fascism can affect LGBT people. Kind of an accurate description of what the movie is. But I feel like V for Vendetta is pretty famous as a movie. Most people have heard of it. It's mentioned in a lot of other media, sometimes in pretty bad faith.
It's kind of got this reputation as being like a guy movie. Thank you, John Green. Fuck you. But this is essential queer cinema. V is trans.
V is trans, yeah.
Can you elaborate, Mary?
V is trans. Why do I need to elaborate? V is trans.
Yeah,
like,
V
that's
is
it.
trans.
My opinion of this movie, as someone who deeply loves this movie and also loves the comic, I definitely think that if you think of the movie as an adaptation of the comic, it's not good. Because the comic is very much about anarchism, whereas the movie is sort of more like, it's not that. I think if you think of the movie as its own separate thing, and the comic as its own separate thing, it's fine. It's good. I think this movie has become quite prescient, and a lot of people have thought about this movie more as time has gone on, because the movie has become, like, almost prophetic in some ways. You know, in 2009, I believe, is when it came out.
2005.
2005, holy crap.
Feel old yet?
Yeah, yeah, I do. 2005, when this movie came out, I think it was probably written off as just a quirky little superhero movie, and it was more than that. I think it was always more than that. Due to some current events and past current events, people have realized that it was always more than a quirky little superhero movie. This movie is so good that I'm not annoyed by Natalie Portman, so
Yeah.
one of the pieces of media that I saw quite young that made me love speculative fiction. I'm never going to disparage this movie. I recently watched it with your dad, Duriadin, and had a great time. That's not a joke, everyone. I literally did. Like, Duriadin was having a nap, and I watched this movie with their dad while they were asleep.
We have now reached the inconsequential price range, I think. Okay. Do you know what I mean?
I do. So at $58 million, we have Deadpool, which is an LGBT movie on the technicality that Deadpool is definitely not straight. He has identified as many things over the years, but I'm just going to go with the words not straight so that people don't jump down my throat. The movie, particularly the first movie, very much just treats this like a joke. It's not done in any way that's meaningful, and I suppose they get away with it as well because Deadpool, very much is not a serious character who takes himself seriously, but the way they handle it still leaves a bad taste in my mouth. Still love the Deadpool movies.
It could be better.
Right. Oh my god, absolutely they could be better. It's the only media that I enjoy Ryan Reynolds in these days. I wish he would stop doing everything else that he is doing and just make the final Deadpool movie that he keeps talking about but never actually giving us. I would love to give this movie a bigger budget if it would mean it wasn't homophobic and that it wasn't racist.
I will pay you not to be...
Yeah, I will literally
for
pay
$58 million, I will stop. Ryan Reynolds is like, for $58 million, I will stop.
Yeah, and also to not hide behind China as the reason you're not doing what you should be doing. But anyway, that's Deadpool at $58 million US. Next up, $60 million US, we have Interview with a Vampire.
You like this movie?
I don't.
Oh, really?
No, I don't like this movie. I just acknowledge that it's like a piece of cinema for a lot of people.
Okay.
I don't like this movie. I actually, as you know, I'm a bit of a vampire auntie, and
That's true.
I remember even when I was younger and tried to watch this movie, I was like, oh, I don't like that he's a slave owner. That makes me very uncomfortable. I think also weird fact, but I think this was the first film I ever saw where I saw nudity in a film, and I remember this very distinctly because I was like, oh my god, Mum's letting me watch a movie that has a naked body in it. Wow.
I know many lesbians who cite that scene as instrumental for them.
I don't know if that was instrumental for me in any way, but I definitely have the memory of going, oh my god, am I allowed to watch this? Because I was quite young. I think I was 13 or 14.
Yeah.
I don't really like vampires, and my only thing that I really like about Anne Rice is that there was a TikTok meme going around once that was like, tell me you're gay without telling me you're gay, and this guy just had a TikTok where the caption was, I'm Anne Rice's son. And that was it. Your thoughts on this film?
My thoughts on this film. Okay, so this film is actually the origin of the here's my review, not gay enough meme. This is the original film that was being discussed. It was actually for an SNL skit. Which I'm not going to go into that. So fans of Anne Rice's Vampire Chronicles, everyone believes Lestat, the vampire, is gay. There's a lot of gay subtext in those books. Anne Rice herself does not appear to have consciously done this, but she's generally pretty good-natured about it whenever critics and fans bring it up. She's just like, oh yeah, I'm so glad you saw that, or I'm really honored that you see it in this way. I don't like this movie. I was shown this movie because it was the favorite movie of this girl who I now hate deeply, and if someone came up to me and asked me, if knowing what I know now, and someone asked me for $60 million to make Interview with a Vampire, I would say no, not because I don't like the movie. I would say no in order to deprive that person of joy.
Personally, I wouldn't be that devastated. And we have the Old Guard, which was made in whenever, 2019, 2020?
Yeah,
I don't know, they
2019.
blur together.
2020, maybe.
$70 million for the Old Guard. I mean, it's based on a comic series by George Rucker about a group of immortals who work as mercenaries to quietly save the world. Two of these immortals, Joe and Nikki, are gay. Like, in the movie, they're canonically gay. I'm pretty sure, I mean, we're all pretty sure that Andy and Quinn...
Yeah, we know this in the comics. Andy and Quinn are
yeah.
gay. Well, Noriko.
Oh, okay.
Her name is Noriko in the comics because, interestingly, they cast Veronica Ngo in the movie, who is Vietnamese, and they very kindly, after she requested it, changed the name of the character, which is pretty cool, I think, but also kind of speaks to what a freaking blank slate, nothing character Noriko originally was, where like her cultural identity meant nothing, and you could just you can just swap out her name, where her cultural identity meant nothing, that they cast someone of the wrong race to begin with. I really love Gina Prince Bythewood's direction. The fight choreography is great. Like, everything physical about this movie is great, but it looks shit. I don't know where the money went, and it could be way better.
The soundtrack is so bad.
Mm-hmm.
I can only guess that maybe the budget went to paying the actors, because the cast is pretty good.
Yeah.
We love Kiki Lane. My only complaint is that Charlize Theron, I think, went too far in the direction of, I'm going to play an immortal who's, like, bored with life because she's lived so long. But I think she went too hard on the bored bit because she really looks like she's just bored, of the movie itself. They're making a sequel to The Old Guard at the moment, though. But I know you're not keen.
I'm not really keen, given where volume 2 of the comic, which was released after the movie came out, given where that ends, it's like, do I support these characters? I don't even support this lesbian relationship that you've put in front of me, because it's the worst thing I've ever seen. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe maybe when you're putting something on a huge freaking screen, spending however much more money it takes to make a movie, you will consider these things. Perhaps. But, been wrong before. Been burnt before. 84 million.
Birds of Prey! We have a whole episode on this. I don't really think we need to spend a lot of time on it. I mean, I'd love to because I love this movie, but this movie is a bit like Deadpool in the sense that the main character is not straight, is bisexual. The film brings this up like super duper briefly, like in a blink and you'll miss it acknowledgement right at the beginning of the movie. So if you were busy putting your phone on silent, you probably missed that acknowledgement. We still love this movie though. It's all about emancipation. It's not really about it's not really about relationships in that way. It's just about, getting your besties together and going to kill some awful people.
I love
and that's
women.
beautiful.
I love stylized violence and women. That's all we need.
A bunch of million. I would give this movie more if it meant that I could have more, Birds of Prey.
We could have Poison Ivy.
If we could have Poison Ivy. Margot! I know it's not her, actually, that it's not her fault. Like she's trying. I know she's doing her best, but come on!
Mm-hmm. 90 million! Also inconsequential, but still, I think... Yeah, still the protagonist. Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, 2011, by David Fincher. I honestly hate the Millennium series. Maybe it's because I'm reading an English translation of it, but I think it's shit. That's why my love for this movie is very impressive, I think, because I don't care for the story at all, but it's just so well made. I don't care. But yeah, the main character, Lisbeth Salander, is bisexual, and you do see her with her sometimes girlfriend in this movie, played by Elodie Young. So, yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for that.
I've never seen that this movie was gay or that this story was or had any kind of gay content in it until Dea put it on the list.
It feels very much like with the original story, that kind of detail is only added in to make Elizabeth more edgy,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Fun.
But yeah, still nice to see Elodie Young. That's all we care about.
Do you know what's ironic about this next movie?
Mm-hmm.
Is that I said when we talked about the first Deadpool movie, I was like, oh, I would give Deadpool more money if it wouldn't be racist or homophobic. Well, in Deadpool 2, that theory was put to the test. It got a sweet $110 110 million, sorry. 110 million. It got $110 in spirit. It got 110 million US dollars, and it was still just as homophobic and racist as the first. But I think maybe it was slightly less homophobic, actually, in the sense that insanely this movie was marketed on having Marvel's first openly gay superhero, which really baffled me as a fan of the, Deadpool comics, because I was like, well, duh, it's got Deadpool in it, but why wouldn't you market the first film like that? It's because in Deadpool 2, they make Negasonic Teenage Warhead, who is played by, actual lesbian Brianna Hildebrand, they make her, a lesbian in the movie, and she's got, like, a girlfriend, and, Deadpool, like, teases her about it in a sort of, like, big brother sort of way. But yeah, it just made me insane, because it was just really weird for me, like, talking about this movie with my friends, with them saying, like, oh yeah, and it's got, like, the first, gay, they really, like, put a gay superhero, like, in Deadpool, and it's like, yeah, that's, like, Deadpool is there. Like, I can't even think of an equivalent of this happening. Like, I've never seen this happen in anything else. It was just bizarre to see, like, but it truly showed me that they don't actually give a shit about that element of Deadpool, which is really sad, because that's actually, like, a pretty big part of who Deadpool is. And it was also quite maddening in the sense that there's a very clear, like, allegory in this film for, like, conversion therapy. And it's really weird that, it's there. Like, there's all this stuff that's there, but it's not mentioned in relation to Deadpool. Again, which sucks. They would just rather make jokes about him being in love with Wolverine, even though he really is in love with Wolverine. But anyway, my eye's starting to twitch, so I can't talk about this anymore. 110 US dollars. Look, I'll double the budget of Deadpool 3 if you once again, Mr. Reynolds, please. I am begging you.
I would double the budget of Deadpool 3 to make Ryan Reynolds stop and not actually have Ryan Reynolds there. I think you can easily replace him with someone else.
I have secretly always thought that Andrew Garfield could do Deadpool.
Oh, shit!
Yeah, because his Spider-Man, like, has lots of, like, Deadpool-esque, like, moments, and I always thought that he could actually do Deadpool if he wanted. That's another discussion for another day. Next up, we have 128.5 million. That's so much money. Oh my gosh. So much
money. Cloud Atlas by the Wachowskis, based on the David Mitchell novel. If you haven't seen this movie, you've probably heard about the yellow face.
But there's also whiteface, which is bizarre.
Yeah, not that great to watch. But yeah, just worth mentioning. Though the Wachowskis, they're some of the only LGBT directors that have actually been able to secure budgets this high for LGBT stories. Yeah, Matrix movie. Mariana didn't actually let me officially put the Matrix movies on this list, but
because, well, if you're not going to put Venom 2 on this list or Venom 1, you can't put Matrix on here.
Yeah, I mean, but like, technically, like, we could put The Gentleman by Guy Ritchie on this list based on because Hugh Grant is gay in that movie.
I didn't know that, and now that you've told me,
That one's 22 million, by the way, and deeply racist as well. Sorry, that's not funny. But yeah, Matrix movies, first Matrix, 63 million, the next two Matrix movies, 150 million each. They got cash money. There's no official reports on how much the new Matrix movie costs, but it's probably something insane like that as well. But yeah, Cloud Atlas, no, I would not give $128 million for this.
Nope. I wouldn't even give half that. I wouldn't even give half that for this.
No, I would give that money if you promise not to do all the yellow face. Yeah, I guess it's a fun movie. But yeah, nah, just as it is, no. Like, as we said, like, they made a perfect movie with $6 million bound, and now they have literally like 50 times. I can't math. 120, yeah, like 50 times. I don't know, I feel like if you had that much money, you could have just got different actors that were, like, actually Asian to do this thing.
Anyway, next up,
155,
horrendous amount of money.
155 million. It's for Alexander 2004. Oh,
million.
this is a 3 hour long epic about Alexander the Great, though. Like, I understand where the money is going. There's actually like 4 different cuts of this movie, and they're all 3 hours long. I actually never heard of this movie before. Before doing research for this episode.
I hadn't heard of this.
I was back. What is with the year 2004 and like 3 hour long action movies about
Lord of the Rings.
like epics? No, not Lord of the Rings. I'm talking about Alexander. There was Troy, which we're going to talk about in a bit.
And I'm saying that it's because of Lord of the Rings impact.
Yeah, true. And fucking Braveheart, I think, as well. Anyways, I'm shocked that I didn't know of this film's existence because it stars Colin Farrell and he's pretty well liked. I quite enjoy them. He looks like shit in this movie, like not even in a good way. He just doesn't look good. His love interest in this is played by Jared Leto, who has lots of eyeliner on. It's not good. Like I feel like no one wants to see that. Like, it's kind of impossible to ignore the fact that Alexander the Great was gay, but this film does its best to avoid it. It doesn't completely avoid it. It's more just like Colin Farrell and Jared Leto kind of like speaking about each other as like Achilles and Patroclus metaphors. That's about as gay as it gets. There's also like this other side character that Colin Farrell has a sex scene with, but it's also like no real loss because no one really wants to see that.
I'll take your word for it. I've never watched it.
I watched it for this episode.
Your dedication.
You're welcome, guys. I
thank
think.
Thank you, Durian.
I don't. 175 million. This is not a gay movie, but it needs to be said. This is Troy 2004, which is also a very similar movie to Alexander 2004. But yeah, Troy is not gay at all in that they completely straightwash the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus.
Is this a movie with Eric Bana in it?
Eric Bana plays Hector. I like him. He and Diane Kruger, like, as Helen, like, Hector and Helen have something going on in this movie that is, I don't understand. That's just because it's very
Eric
interesting.
Bana and Diane Kruger.
Yeah, it's real interesting, lads. I feel like more people think about those two in this movie than they do about Brad Pitt and, I think it's Garrett Hedlund. Oh yeah, $175 million and it's not even gay.
I would not give it 175. I would not give it. Would not.
It's not that fun. And last up, drum roll.
Drum roll, the most expensive LGBT film, at least
technically,
is, drum roll, The Eternals. Or Eternals. I think it's actually just called Eternals.
Yeah.
But it feels weird just calling it Eternals. It's The Eternals, directed by Chloe Zhao, released in 2021.
Yeah.
This movie cost $200 million to make.
I think in general it was money well spent.
I do think it was money well spent.
We actually really enjoyed this movie, sorry.
I'm not sorry. It's over 2.5 hours long, but I didn't even feel that while watching it.
Yeah.
It's done very well. I was very entertained the entire time. And I actually would watch it again, which I think is like a good litmus test for a movie. There are a lot of movies on this list that I absolutely would not watch again, but Eternals would happily watch it again. And yeah, so of all the films we previously discussed, they all feature an LGBT protagonist. Meanwhile, Eternal's gay character in question, Phastos, played by Brian Tyree Henry, while he is part of the main ensemble, he doesn't get much screen time. We thought we'd mention it though because Marvel is the hugest thing ever, and they made a big deal out of having the first LGBT plus kiss on screen. And you actually do see it. It's not like blink and you miss it. Like, it's very much there. Also, the sequence in which it happens is one of, like, my favorites in the movie. Like, it's a really funny and really lovely sequence. I just love this whole sort of scene of Richard Madden's character and Gemma Chan's character, like, coming to Phastos' house and seeing him with his husband and his kid.
And his husband's played by our fave, Haz Sleiman.
We love you, Lebanese legend. Also, I think it's really beautiful. Haz was the one that he said to Brian, like, oh, I think you should speak Arabic. And he was like, oh, that'd be a great idea. And so he, like, learnt the Arabic to speak for the movie. It was really nice and it's really lovely. And also, I just want to say, Angelina Jolie is in this movie. And she is bi and she's a queen, and, you know, her and Richard Madden have a fight scene, and I love bi on bi violence. You know, I'm here for it. Also, I just think all the Eternals are bi. Like, you know, it's the old adage of why would you live forever and not be gay. Like, it was such a good movie. It was so funny, though, hearing Richard Madden, like, bang on about a character called Cersei. It was very funny. I was having a good time.
and Kit Harington.
And Kit Harington, like, could go on about Cersei. Okay, guys. I think, actually, it's a pretty nice movie to be this high, to be honest. Like, if we'd ended this list on Troy, I would have felt very pessimistic.
Yeah. We did like the movie in general, but this is, in terms of gay content, this is 20 minutes out of nearly 3 hours. Hypothesis, sometimes things that are expensive are worse. I would say sometimes things that are expensive aren't that very gay at all, actually. The most expensive thing with the most, like, substantial gay content on this list is Cloud Atlas, and that's just bad. So yeah, that's just sad. It's worse in this case.
That's just depressing.
It's depressing in this case. It's also, yeah, as we've mentioned, like, there are so many great LGBT films that have been made. Like, you know, Moonlight was our baseline of 4 million, but there are so many other great movies that are our favorites that have been made with way less than that. And really, like, when you look at films like Eternals and Troy and Alexander, and you could make hundreds of other really good films with just, like, the amount of money it takes to make one of these big spectacles.
Literally any of the last, like, 6 or 7 films we just mentioned, except for Birds of Prey, I would happily not make them and give the money to an LGBT filmmaker to make something gayer. I also just think with film, because the market is quite hostile to original stories these days, it's probably getting a lot harder for films to have gay content, let alone for LGBT filmmakers to make the films that they want to make. And on that note, I would like to say, you know, it is also good to, like, there is a lot of great TV at the moment. Like, I feel like TV is where it's happening because it's not as, like, I mean, it obviously still is market determined.
TV, you have a much longer amount of time to, like, make money off it.
I think TV these days is a lot easier to find even than LGBT films are. I mean, not that it's super easy. You know, sometimes things that are expensive are indeed worse. Sometimes they're not that bad, but, you know, sometimes they are worse. And sometimes things that are cheap are better.
But also, all the time, if you do have more money, it's easier to make these things.
Yes.
And we should be trying to make things easier.
What have we got coming next for the listeners of GayV Club, Joanne?
Next up, 2021 LGBT film and TV wrap-up.
Hell yeah!
Yes!
Thank you! We hope that, you know, you have enjoyed listening to us pretend that we know what we would even do with this kind of money. Alright. Thank you, guys!
Thank you, bye-bye.
Guys!
Thank you, bye-bye.
Guys!
Thank you, bye-bye.
Guys!
Thank you.